I just got finished reading a very interesting book. How did Abraham Lincoln pay for his war? And by reading this book, a book about Jay Cooke, a man most of us have never heard of, I learned how Jay Cooke revolutionized how America funded its war. Now, during the Civil War, Chase was the Secretary of the Treasury. And it was Chase's duty to go out there and raise the money. And he did what everybody had done prior to him. Go to foreign governments, go to Wall Street. And he was not able to get rid of the bonds. These particular bonds were called 520s, indicating that they matured in 20 years, but that the government could redeem them in as little as 5 years. But Chase could not get Wall Street to fund Abraham Lincoln's war. And as such, that is when Chase turned to Jay Cooke. And Jay Cooke came up with a novel approach of going to the masses. First off, he started an advertising campaign. He bought advertisements in every northern newspaper. It didn't matter if it was an English-speaking newspaper or a German-speaking newspaper or some other foreign language. Jay Cooke ran ads in those newspapers. He also purchased ads in all the religious publications. So it didn't matter if it was a Methodist newsletter. He went out to every possible place where there was advertisement to be bought, and he bought it. And then he worked with all the editors of all the various newspapers and got them to run favorable articles about buying government bonds. Then on top of this, he went out there and printed flyers that appeared on the walls of steamboats and on trains and at train stations and at post offices. Everywhere you turned, you would see flyers advertising people to buy bonds. And then he would set up locations where people could come in and purchase bonds. In the big cities, these offices would be open up 24 hours a day. So as soon as you got your wages, you could go down there at midnight and buy your government bonds. And if you did not live in a city that was big enough to do government bonds, well, you could go to your bank and they would telegraph the offices of Jay Cooke. And the telegram were constantly streaming in purchases of bonds. Of course, the post office was also used, and every day there would be thousands upon thousands of envelopes with people sending their money across the nation. Jay Cooke also hired agents who traveled to the mining camps of California, to the mines in Pennsylvania, actually traveled to the soldiers and traveled from camp to camp with the soldiers, selling U.S. government bonds to the people. It was the people of the United States who funded Abraham Lincoln's war. What Jay Cooke did was a new scheme. Rather than go to a bunch of millionaires and get them to loan money to the United States, Jay Cooke instead went to the millions and got them to loan $50, $100, $500, $1,000. And by going to the people in small amounts, Jay Cooke was able to raise more funds than was anticipated would have been able to achieve by going to the larger firms. And from those lessons, the United States government created a new model for funding its wars. Because both in World War I and World War II, we funded our wars by the sale of bonds to the people. J. Cooke is a very influential individual. And while this book was probably not the best written, it was very educational. You didn't read this book to understand how Grant won or how Lee was winning or what was going on at Gettysburg. You read this book because you want to understand how American finance was working during the Civil War. I highly encourage you that if you want to obtain a different perspective of the American Civil War, then you pick up this book, a book written in 1907 about J. Cooke. And I encourage you to read this book and gain a deeper understanding of American finance during the Civil War.